Hi everyone, welcome to Trauma Unpacked. It's great to see you all again. I hope you've subscribed and you've commented and you've really enjoyed the first video that we just put out. This is going to be a different type of video. We're going to start a character study series where I do look into trauma in different characters and different people in pop culture, which would include things like music, things like books, things like comic books, things like film, just different forms of pop culture. We're looking at people who we're all familiar with, who've been traumatized, who've gone through intense hardship, and who have come out the other end either good, and in a lot of cases, people have come out not so good, right? And I think that's gonna be very fun because we can draw inspiration, we can draw guidance, we can draw, just different things from people who've gone through similar experiences. Myself, film therapy was a big thing that helped me get through very difficult times. So, which is what sort of inspired me to want to start a video about trauma in pop culture, right? I think it's something that we can draw inspiration from. I did mention in my very first video that trauma in pop culture is very important because a lot of times we need people we can relate to. We need situations we can relate to. We need experiences that we can relate to. And it's important to look at things that we have passion for, things that we have interest in, and pop culture is a great place to look for that. Because a lot of the time, therapy in a room, therapy in a in a clinical setting, sometimes that's not always the way that we can get healed or we can find some form of recovery. Sometimes we do need to draw inspiration from people or characters that we admire, that we look up to, that we aspire to be like, for us to have an example to come out of problems. So that's what's inspired me to create this video today. I hope you do enjoy. You do enjoy the video and take care and watch and hopefully you learn something powerful about the character that I'll speak about today. Now, the character who I want to look into today is none other than one of my favorite characters in all pop culture, one of my favorite characters in fiction, one of my favorite characters growing up from a very young child up until now, and that is Bruce Wayne. Okay, Bruce Wayne would later become the pop culture figure Batman, and I want to look at his story from when he was a child until he was, became Batman and he grew up and so on and so forth. So I want to really look at him again from his childhood and see what exactly happened to Bruce Wayne and why. How did he deal with those problems? What influenced him to deal with those problems? What did he become, and why did he use certain methods to overcome his trauma? And what did that make him become? What can we draw from that? What lessons can we learn? How can these experiences and these methods be identified in real life? Because at the end of the day, we don't live in a comic book. We don't live in movies. This is real life. But like I mentioned last week in my video, we can draw inspiration from a lot of pop culture type figures, a lot of pop culture type influences, a lot of pop culture type people, right? So, and that's what I want to look into with you. Now, when it comes down to Bruce Wayne, for those of you that don't know, I'll give you a brief description of who he is and what he went through and sort of his childhood, so you understand the type of person he was, the type of life he was brought into. And I think that does help. It helps look at why the trauma might have been dealt with a certain way and sort of how that impacted him. Rather than me going into, just Batman as the character, I want to really look at Bruce Wayne more so than Batman himself. So Bruce Wayne was born to Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne. They were basically billionaires in Gotham. They had investments in the city, owned hospitals, had all these major sort of financial assets in Gotham. And they were a wealthy, well-known family in Gotham, right? So think of like Donald Trump. His dad was someone like Donald Trump. He's a very big, iconic businessman in Gotham, and obviously his mother, Martha Wayne. Now, obviously, they lived in a mansion, and underneath this mansion was a massive cave, which had a lot of bats. Okay, so Bruce Wayne, as a child, is a lot of children do. You go around and you play around in these areas, and you try and explore things, and you get into trouble doing all this crazy stuff. Like the kid, that's what Bruce Wayne did as a child. And in this cave, again, like I mentioned, there were a lot of bats, right? And obviously Bruce Wayne from time to time would come face to face with these bats. And bats generally are quite, I think for kids especially, they're quite scary creatures. They're black. They're, they come out at night. They can be quite scary for a child. So obviously Bruce Wayne developed an intense fear. Not a small fear, it was a very intense, crippling fear of bats.
Can I see? Finders keepers, and I found it. In my garden. Finders keepers! Bruce?
And that's a very important thing, because that fear of bats, hence why he's called the Batman, which I'll get to later on as to why he sort of chose that name and adopted that persona. It is a very important part in his arc, in the person he becomes. So obviously, again, he embraces this persona. This fear cripples him, and he sort of can't get over this fear of bats as a child. Now, what happens to Bruce Wayne is there's a night he goes to an opera. So obviously, an opera is a big play with his parents in Gotham. And in this opera show that he's in at the time, there are people dressed up as bats. They're sort of climbing off walls, doing these dances. But that triggers his trauma. So that he almost has like a panic attack in the middle of this opera when he sees these bats sort of at play, and he sort of sees these bats going through what they're going through, and he panics and he's like, I want to leave, I want to get out of this situation. I want to leave. I want to go, and I want to go. So he leaves this opera with his parents. They go out into an alleyway just outside of the opera room because again, he can't control his fear. He wants to leave. As he leaves the opera room, he is there's like a homeless man or some kind of criminal who's on the streets, and who comes up to Bruce Wayne, his mom and dad, and he asks them for money. Okay. And Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas Wayne, gives this homeless guy the money. But what happens is when he takes the money, he shoots Bruce Wayne's father and then shoots Bruce Wayne's mother. Okay. So his mom and dad are killed in front of Bruce Wayne. And Bruce Wayne was a little child at the time, probably about 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And he's shot basically because of this experience. Not because of experience, sorry. The parents are shot because he can't control his fear. And Bruce Wayne is left. He's left there. And that's basically what happens in his childhood.
What's wrong, Bruce?
No, it was me. I just needed some fresh air. A little bit of opera goes a long way. Right, Bruce? Come on. Let's go.
Wallace, Joey, come on, fast.
That's fine. Just take it easy. Take it easy. Here you go. It's fine. It's fine. Now just take it and go.
I said, Joey.
Now, this is a horrible experience, I think, for anyone. I don't know if anyone watching has gone through anything near as scary as that. I'm glad I haven't. But to see your own parents get killed at the age of, what, 8 years old, 9 years old in front of you, that's emotionally scarring. So what happens after this is Bruce Wayne is then brought in, and he's taken, sort of adopted in a way, or maybe taken care of by Alfred, who you guys would know as the Bruce Wayne's butler. But he's basically Bruce Wayne's surrogate father. So he takes him in, and Bruce Wayne is sort of raised essentially by Alfred in the absence of his parents. Now, I'm going to stop here for a second because there's more stuff that happens with Bruce Wayne moving forward. But I want to stop and discuss the trauma of his parents dying and kind of how that impacted him, maybe what that was like. Because you can imagine seeing something like that would sort of, I believe that created a lack of security for Bruce Wayne, right? It created, because as a child, you find a lot of security and comfort in having your parents around you. You find a lot of security in having mom and dad. You find security in, in sort of that environment. So to have that taken from you in such a harsh way, I believe Bruce Wayne became very, security wasn't something that he had a lot of confidence in from that age. And he needed something or someone that he can confide in and put his security into for him to move forward with his life, because he lost that security. He lost his father. He lost his mother. He lost that family dynamic moving forward. So obviously losing his parents at that age was very scarring for Bruce Wayne. Now, as we continue and we look at what Bruce Wayne did afterwards in terms of dealing with the problem, we need to really look at, again, I am going to focus primarily on Christopher Nolan's interpretation of the Batman character, just to, as I'm referencing things and sort of analyzing stuff. I will touch base on a few other, sources like the comic books or like the cartoon, the TV shows. But I think primarily it is looking at Bruce Wayne as in Christopher Nolan's films, the Dark Knight trilogy, for you guys who don't know who Christopher Nolan is. So what happens with Bruce Wayne is he did get some advice and mentoring from his dad, right, who was a philanthropist, about not going too far, about sort of being a morally sort of acceptable citizen, right? So I think that part, even before he died, that's sort of the lessons and the principles he was taught. On top of this, I think a big part is that when Bruce Wayne fell into the pit, those of you who've watched Batman Begins, his dad always said to him, "Why did we fall?" And that's to pick ourselves back up. So I think that element of when life gets difficult, or when you face a tragedy, when you face a failure, it's there to help you get back up. And get back up, I believe, means to do something good, to enforce change, for something positive to come out of a negative experience. So that philosophy, I believe, would have been ingrained in Bruce Wayne from a very young age, right? And that's sort of what, what shaped him into who he would become, which is very important. On top of that, Bruce Wayne did have Alfred. Okay, he had Alfred as a young child, this father figure who also had essentially his dad's values, his dad's convictions, his dad's beliefs, his dad's views of life. And that experience would have had a great impact on Bruce Wayne, as he continued to grow up and he continued to change and so on and so forth. But I believe that's very important. And one major statistic that I want to highlight to you guys is that mentorship in general, having a mentor, having people who can teach you and guide you in life, is very important in the people that we do become. And you see it in those who take a bad route and those who take a good route as they become adults, is a lot of these people don't have mentors or good mentors to say that. And I'll get to Bruce Wayne's more in detail about his mentors shortly. But you can see from a young age, although he went through a horrible tragedy, he did have, I would say, positive mentors from his father, in the form of Alfred, and also a mentor in Commissioner Gordon, who did sort of encourage him when he was a child after he went through what he experienced. So you can see here with Batman, he always had positive influences around him which helped him deal with that tragedy as he continued to grow up. Now what happens, I'll continue again. This is Christopher Nolan's take on the character in terms of his origin. He moves away to Asia to get some to kind of find a purpose, because I would believe you'd feel lost. You need some kind of direction. You need to know who you are after losing your parents in that manner. So he leaves, he goes to Asia, and he's trained by another mentor who's Henry Ducard, who also becomes Ra's al Ghul, who reveals himself to be Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul is his mentor, and Ra's al Ghul teaches Bruce Wayne at the time how to fight, so how to fight in ninja vigilante style, teaches Batman all the fighting techniques that he knows now. So physically, he does get a lot of physical training from Batman. But he does instill hope in Batman. He tells Batman that he needs to be more than a man. He needs to devote himself to something greater, to become a legend, right? He tells Bruce Wayne these things as a younger man. Okay, he gets his mentorship at that age. And I think when you get certain mentors at certain stages of life, it's also very important, okay? Because he had a mentor when he was in his I'm assuming Batman was in his early 20s, sort of a younger adult man, when he was trying to find destiny, trying to become great. And at the time, he was just fighting criminals with no aim, with no purpose, with no goal, with no direction, And that was a very important part of Batman and Bruce Wayne's developments.
Did you have dream? Nightmare? Worse than this place? I'm going to fight you. Again? Until I kill you.
Can they kill me before breakfast?
You are in hell, little man. And I am the devil.
You're not the devil. You're practice.
Military! Why? For protection! I don't need protection.
Protection for them.
Are you so desperate to fight criminals that you lock yourself in to take them on one at a time?
Actually, there were 7 of them.
I counted 6, Mr. Wayne.
How do you know my name?
The world is too small for someone like Bruce Wayne to disappear, no matter how deep he chooses to sink.
Who are you?
My name is merely Ducard, but I speak for Ra's al Ghul, a man greatly feared by the criminal underworld. A man who can offer you a path.
Makes you think I need a path.
Someone like you is only here by choice. You have been exploring the criminal fraternity, but whatever your original intentions, you have become truly lost.
On what path can Ra's al Ghul offer?
The path of a man who shares his hatred of evil and wishes to serve true justice. The path of the League of Shadows.
The vigilantes.
No. The vigilante is just a man lost in the scramble for his own gratification. He can be destroyed or locked up. But if you make yourself more than just a man, if you devote yourself to an ideal, if they can't stop you, then you become something else entirely.
Which is?
Legend, Mr. Wayne. Tomorrow you will be released. If you are bored of brawling with petty thieves and want to achieve something, there is a rare blue flower that grows on the eastern slopes. Pick one of these flowers. If you can carry it to the top of the mountain, you may find what you were looking for in the first place.
And what was I looking for?
Only you can know that.
So obviously that happened. He went through what he went through, and it sort of went on from there. And the powerful thing with Ra's al Ghul is that Ra's al Ghul, or Henry Descartes at the time, wasn't a good mentor in some ways. He did teach Batman the essential, I would say, psychological and physical requirements needed to be Batman, but he did have a certain view on how to deal with criminals, how to deal with evil, how to deal with problems. That was to exterminate it, to kill, to seek revenge, to get even. That was his philosophy. And it's interesting that Bruce Wayne didn't adopt that philosophy despite him being mentored by Ra's al Ghul. And that's because he was mentored by Alfred, and also he was mentored by Alfred and his father, Thomas Wayne, who instilled those values in him as a child. You trained him as a child. And I think when he became a man, he knew what I will and won't do, even though Ra's al Ghul had a profound impact on him, which is very important. I think it's important when dealing with tragedy and with trauma, I think this is very important in terms, I think even for, you could say even for parents or people who are older, right? To know when the right time is to teach children or your child certain lessons and certain morals and certain principles. Because with Bruce Wayne, as you see, he was taught these things at a young age. And as he grew up into adolescence and he hit that age, he knew, I don't want to do that because I believe this is wrong. And he got that belief because of the experiences he had with, obviously with Alfred and with Alfred and with his father. So yeah, that's basically what happened in that case. He then goes back to Gotham. Okay, he goes back to Gotham and he becomes Batman. This is sort of the road to becoming the Batman character. And it's interesting to look at why Bruce Wayne decided to adopt the Batman character. Why did he decide to become that character? Why didn't he just, do something else, right? And I think it's harking back to the lessons he learned from Ra's al Ghul, which was to become more than a man and to also devote himself to something greater. And I think he was able to do that as the Batman character. A deeper root to why he became Batman. And what's interesting is that I was looking at some stats, and it does mention that 90% of people who go to therapy are taught, not people who are taught, but people who go to therapy are given the method of exposure psychology, right? Exposure therapy, which is where you directly expose yourself to a problem, to a fear. And it actually has a 90% success rate, exposure therapy. And that's what Bruce Wayne does, right? He goes back to the cave where he saw these bats. And these bats come out of the cave, and he just stands inside the swarm of bats until he calms down, until he feels safe, until he feels good, until he feels comfortable. And I think that's very powerful because with him, he was able to overcome his fear in that moment. And he conquered his fear.
Blessed bat again, sir. They nest somewhere in the grounds.
mention the reason why he became Batman was to instill the fears he had into his enemies, into the people who were against him. And that's very powerful. That's a very powerful thing because, you know, it shows you can overcome and you can turn the negative thing into something positive, or you can turn the thing that harmed you, you know, into a positive thing. And that's exactly what it did. And that's why he took on the Batman character. Now, I was looking into it a bit further, and I can see that with Batman, he, in a way, became a hero from evil. And I think even looking at actors like Christian Bale, who've played Batman, you've mentioned that he is driven by very negative experiences, but he's doing something very positive about it. And I think that's a very conflicting thing to do. And that's a very powerful lesson to learn from people, is the ability to be moved by, to do good, to become a good person, despite having negative experiences. And that's exactly what happened with Batman. He went through a horrible tragedy, but instead of using that tragedy to inflict more harm, to make the world worse, he made the world better. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And that did happen because of the mentorship that he had. That did happen because, I think in partially because of Ra's al Ghul, right? He did look into that, and that was very important to him. But I think it highlights a bigger problem in society today, which is the lack of mentorship, the lack of father figures, the lack of people that we do have in our lives to help us overcome problems, to teach us certain lessons. And which is why it's important, if you don't have someone like that, if you don't have someone who physically can help and, you know, advise and help you get through, it's very important to try and find inspiration from something, whether that's, you know, if you're not religious, whether that's in film, whether that's in music, whether that's in pop culture. It depends, right? It depends where you want to turn and where you want to get that inspiration from, which is extremely important, obviously, when dealing with this sort of thing. And I think that's very powerful. I think that's a very powerful thing that we can take from Batman, is the fact that he didn't allow the pain and the tragedy to destroy him. And obviously now I really want to look into as well the villains, you know, in the Batman universe, you know, the adversaries that he faced when he became Batman, and why perhaps they didn't have the same solution. They didn't have the same mindset. They didn't look at it the same way, because they also faced, some of them anyway did face horrible tragedies, right? But they chose to do evil. They chose to do the wrong thing. And I think that's a powerful thing, is the power of choice. And I think that's a big thing in the Batman world, is that we can always pick what we want to do. But I think there's always, of course, choices are you have the power to choose. No one can, in most cases, no one can force you to make a certain decision. But there are definitely a lot of influences that influence the way we behave and the way we decide to do things and why we make certain choices. And we see that in the Batman universe, that a lot of these villains that he goes up against, they didn't have mentors. They didn't have people to help them. They didn't have people who could spur them on. They didn't have the support that, ultimately could have helped them in a big way. And I think that's a massive problem in today's society, is that a lot of people just don't have that. They say 1 in 4 households rather, don't have any parental mentorship. 1 in 5 people don't grow up with that mentorship, whether that's a biological mentor or it's someone else who's not directly related to them, but they don't have that. And I think when we look at the world and we look at people who are now criminal, people who are doing horrible things, a lot of it does come from the fact that they just didn't have that mentorship. They didn't have the support that they would have liked to have. So all in all, I do think Batman is a great character. Bruce Wayne's a great inspiration, is because he did do good despite being driven by negative experiences, but he was fortunate to have the mentors. And I think it's just very important, again, just to hone in. I think what we can learn from this is, from the last week's episode, is that it's important to try and find, if you don't have a mentor, it's important to try and find one. It's important to go out of your way and try and maybe, if it's not in person, if it's something you can find some kind of inspiration or mentorship where you can learn, because mentors also ultimately teach you lessons. They teach us values. They teach us morals. They teach us certain principles. It's important for us to go out and do that, just to make sure that we can, that we can definitely achieve the things that we can achieve, which is overcoming these traumas and getting past your pain and getting past your problems. And I think that's the lesson we can learn from Bruce Wayne is that, again, he overcame, he became a hero when he shouldn't have been a hero. I don't believe someone who went through something like that should become a hero, but he wanted to get rid of the problems that were in his life at the time. And I think that's a very powerful, very, very powerful story. And for me personally, that is why, in terms of on the superhero side of things, in terms of, if you just specifically speaking about comics, Batman is my favorite superhero for those reasons. I think he is very relatable. I think he is human. He doesn't have powers. Not just that, but I think the things that he experienced, the things he went through, the things he overcame are very relatable, and they're things that we can all learn from and try and overcome, right? So fantastic. I think that's all I have to say about Batman, about Bruce Wayne. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear what you think about Batman and Bruce Wayne, and if you have any other insights or any other views of the character, or anything else I've maybe even missed, I'd love for you to comment and subscribe and just tell me what it is that maybe you draw inspiration from. If there's other characters perhaps that you'd like to speak about, or another character that gives you inspiration, I'd love to hear from you. Again, every week we're going to release one of these character study episodes. At times I'll have a guest who will come and speak with me about a certain character. Next week we'll be speaking about the X-Men, and I'll be looking at Magneto from X-Men, who's also one of my favorite characters in sort of the comic universe, with my good friend. So we'll be here together speaking about that, and we look forward to that next week. But in the meantime, again, please comment, please subscribe, and please let me know what you think about the Batman and Bruce Wayne character, and what we can learn from his trauma and how he overcame his problems. Thank you so much, and you take care, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.